Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Beach, you come to us today with a long record of work for the Mercatus Center and the Heritage Foundation, two groups which have been extensively funded by the fossil fuel industry and by right-wing climate-denying foundations. For instance, the Heritage Foundation has received $780,000 directly from ExxonMobil since 1998. ExxonMobil, of course, still fights climate action here in Congress. Greenpeace says the Heritage Foundation received over $5.7 million from Koch brothers-related foundations between 1997 and 2015. And the Conservative Transparency Project says that Heritage received $25 million in funding from the climate-denying Sarah Scaife Foundation. Similarly, at Mercatus, the Mercatus Center has received at least $10.4 million from Koch brothers-related foundations. The Mercatus Center at George Mason University received at least $330,000 directly from ExxonMobil since 1998. And Mercatus has received over $10 million from something called Donors Trust. Let me first ask you, do you know what Donors Trust is?
Thank you, Senator. I do not know what Donors Trust is.
Do you know if they have any business?
I don't know anything about Donors Trust.
Has anyone in the time that you were serving as the Vice President for Policy Research at the Mercatus Center disclosed to you that they were donors to the Mercatus Center through Donors Trust?
No, they have not.
For the record, Donors Trust is a group that has no business purpose whatsoever. Its function is to launder the identities of donors that wish to give to organizations but don't wish to have the organization tainted by the identity of the donor, and therefore it's prominently used by climate-denying and fossil fuel interests to fund their front groups. The reason that I ask these questions, Dr. Beach, is that back when we were looking at the Lieberman-Warner Climate Security Act and other climate-related legislation, you were at the Heritage Foundation Center for Data Analysis, which did a report looking at compliance and energy cost increases, doing a cost-benefit analysis, in theory, of that legislation. That report was, in fact, used by the fossil fuel industry to oppose that legislation, was it not?
I think I recall that it was, yes.
Yes, indeed. And was that report ever subjected to peer review?
Yes, Senator.
Really?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. My information is that it was non-peer reviewed.
The most important pieces that came out of the Center for Data Analysis, I always made sure that they were given peer review.
You mean scientific peer review, or just some?
Well, this was an econometric
peer review in the ordinary sense of the term, correct?
Thank you. This was an econometric study. We used the Global Insight model, which was in widespread use throughout the federal government, to look at what would changes to carbon tax levels mean for consumer prices, investment, and so forth and so on.
Let me push this off to a question for the record then, and we'll ask you in a question for the record exactly what the peer review steps were for this report and by whom. Did that report on the Lieberman-Warner Climate Security Act take into account any health or climate benefits from regulating carbon emissions?
Senator, we believe that the benefits are embodied in the way the model evaluates costs. So if you have cleaner energy, for example, you would have lower household costs for certain things, healthcare, for example. Your cars might cost a little bit more. So the way that
your testimony to us is that your report on the Lieberman-Warner Climate Security Act does quantify the health and/or climate benefits of carbon emissions reduction.
Senator, let me clarify. We were specifically interested in what would happen to household costs, business costs, if the legislation became law.
Okay, well, we'll follow up. In your testimony, you've said that you support the ruthless process of peer review, but our information is that this report was never subjected to peer review. You've said that you support neutrality and objectivity, but I don't believe you quantified the health or climate benefits, and we can explore that further in questions for the record. And finally, you say you stand for tough standards of transparency and disclosure, but for years your organization has been funded by an organization devoted to identity laundering, which seems contrary to that. My time has expired, I'm sorry to say.